Welcome back to Yates American J180 restoration. We're finally at the point where we can start putting things together, and in this episode we're going to assemble some of the drivetrain components. Well, I got these frames stripped and painted, and while they're drying I'll work on reassembling some of these drivetrain components. To press on these idler pulley bearings, I'm using a 3/4 inch deep socket. I had to go back and look at the disassembly photos to remember if this assembles like this or like this. It does go like this. It's not quite fully seated. I'll put a pad on top of this and finish pushing it in. I noticed when I was cleaning up this idler pulley that it's ever so slightly crowned, and I assume that's to help keep the flat belt centered on the pulley. This is the main bracket for that, where the Reeves drive and the big pulley go. I think this grease fitting would be best served if it's pointing basically upwards. This big gear is part of the chain transmission. After doing that first bearing on this gear, it was denting the wood here, so I decided to find an aluminum plate and push the second bearing in. And finally, here's the other part of that chain transmission. I think I've shown this before, but I like to purge out the old grease from these assemblies. Earlier, when I was describing the sequence of assembly of the rotocone Reeves drive with the axle and the big pulley, I lied. So this axle needs to go on the pulley first, and then the Reeves drive rotocone will get mounted to it. I may have mentioned before, I'm throwing away all the lock washers, and I'm using some grade 8 flat washers and putting some blue Loctite on the fasteners. Attaching the rotocone Reeves drive to the shaft involves a woodruff key and two very small set screws. And then finally, for this main drive pulley assembly, this bracket that gets mounted, this gets mounted to one of the frames. And I'm going to put a piece of, this is like 2/1000 shim, I'm going to put this in here before tightening up that set screw. I've already done these other Zerk fittings, but I wanted to go ahead and get these filled up with grease before I continue with the reassembly. This Rotocone Reeves drive, I have no idea how much grease it's going to take. There's a lot of open space in there. The paint on these frames is pretty dry. When I was disassembling this machine, I was surmising that part of this drivetrain frame was assembled on the bench before it was assembled onto the machine. So I'm going to assemble the tension idler pulley here, the chain transmission, and then the main pulley with the Rotocone Reeves drive. There's a set screw on the back side. It needs to be tightened up for that axle on this chain transmission. Okay, let's put this idler tension pulley in now. Reeves drive. And once again, I'm dispensing with lock washers. I'm putting some blue Loctite on. That was probably way more than I needed. Okay, I think that's enough assembly work before we put the frame onto the base of the machine.